Unit 3, Period 3, deals with the military aspects leading up to the Revolutionary War. Again, the Revolutionary War was fought between 1776 and 1783. There were hundreds and even thousands of smaller and larger battles fought during the Revolutionary War between the British and the American colonists. We're only going to talk about a few. And the first one we're going to talk about was huge because the American Army, up until December of 1776, from July to December of 1776, had not been very successful. General George Washington had lost New York to the British, and morale, morale, spirit of the army was and the colonies was down quite a bit. He had to retreat across the Delaware River into New Jersey, and but George Washington made a daring move. He learned that the king had hired a group of German mercenary soldiers known as Hessians, and they were stationed in the town of Trenton. And so George Washington came up with a daring plan to cross the Delaware River and attack these Hessians at the city of Trenton. The difficulty lay in the fact that they had to cross a frozen river to get to from New Jersey to get to Delaware and to attack the Hessians there at Trenton. And the Germans did not believe that he would be capable of leading his men in such a dangerous journey, but he was able to do it. And this is a good example of George Washington's leadership abilities during the Revolutionary War. Notice this next battle is not bold-faced on the outline, and that's because it's not in the standards. It's not part of the standards, but to me, it's a very important battle in the Revolutionary War because the soon early in the war, the British decide to invade from Canada. And from this map here, you can see a red line here coming down the St. Lawrence River, and another British general, Burgoyne, attacking across Lake Champlain and down into the United States. And an American general named Horatio Gates is assigned the task of stopping these two armies with one American army. And luckily for us, and by good strategy on his part, he chooses to fight each army independently and is able to defeat them. Why is this battle important? Because it allows an American negotiator named Benjamin Franklin to successfully be able to negotiate with the French king an alliance. Benjamin Franklin would not have been allowed to speak to the French king if it had not been for this French aristocrat named Marquis de Lafayette. Marquis de Lafayette allowed Benjamin Franklin access to be able to talk to the king. The name Lafayette may be familiar with you guys because in LaGrange there's a large statue in the middle of the town, and that is a statue of Marquis de Lafayette. If you take a left off of 27 and head towards the mall, you are on Lafayette Parkway. A lot of towns especially in the South, but across the United States, are named after Revolutionary War heroes, towns and streets and things like that. So the French are now on our side, and that helps tip the tide in our favor. One of the most difficult things that George Washington faced as the general of the American Army was the lack of supplies, clothing, weapons, bullets. A lot of this was solved by the French, but before the French could really get into the war and help us, George Washington and his army had to survive a winter in Pennsylvania at a campground that they had to build called Valley Forge. While the British stayed in the cities in nice warm houses with fires and plenty of food, the American colonists had to live on the land. Luckily for George Washington, he had a Prussian drill sergeant with him named Baron von Steuben. And Baron von Steuben is going to help George Washington train the American militia, which are basically untrained soldiers, in the ability to fight a European style of war. And this, along with the help from the French, is going to allow the Americans to be able to defeat American colonists to be able to defeat the British. The life of a colonial soldier was not easy at all. They did not have proper clothing. A lot of them's boots wore out. They weren't being paid. Their enlistments were way too long, and those types of things. But after Valley Forge and the help of the Second Continental Congress, and the help of the French, the tide of battle begins to turn in the Americans' favor. So much so that the culminating battle of the Revolutionary War, even though it was in 1781 and the war was not over until 1783, occurred at the Battle of Yorktown. Uh, Here you can see American soldiers breaking their way through a barricade and attacking British soldiers at Yorktown. Here you can see the water behind in the background of the drawing, and that is because Yorktown was located next to a river. And the reason why the Americans and the French were successfully able to defeat the British were because the British could not use their navy to escape like they had in the past. Geography played a tremendous role in the Battle of Yorktown because the British were trapped in the city and they could not escape on the river here to get away like they had in the past. The French armies and the American armies trapped them there and they couldn't get away. And since this was the largest British army in the field of battle, this leads to the Treaty of Paris of 1783, which ends the Revolutionary War. You can see the difference in the map between this map and the map that shows the Treaty of Paris of 1763, because this time the Americans win all the lands east of the Mississippi River. So the terms of the Treaty of Paris of 1783 was the American colonists won their independence, won all lands east of the Mississippi River. The difference was that the British retained the rights to Canada. This concludes Period 3, Unit 3, Section 4, the military parts of the Revolutionary War.